So I'm going to kind of talk about, how we built this community a bit and what lessons which you could learn from it. So I hope this is not a controversial statement, but tech has a diversity and inclusivity problem. C++, as a part of tech, also has a diversity and inclusivity problem, especially because, it's been around for 20, 30 years. To give you a sense of history, this is a little timeline of the kind of some important parts in the development of C++. Started in 1979, development started, and then we have first compiler, standardization, C++ 11, then 14, 17, 20 coming next year. In terms of community, the first C++ conference was in 1992. So there's probably a fair number of people in this room who are younger than the C++ community. And affecting change in a space like that is really, really hard. So this is what the conference list looks like today. I don't expect you to be able to read this, but just note there's a lot of conferences going on. We have about 17 going just this year. These are all just pure C++ conferences, well, mostly. We also have about 6 million C++ developers in the world at the moment. So it's a lot of people, a lot of history. How do you actually carve out an inclusive space within this? So one of the main digital spaces for C++ has been a Slack channel. I have a picture of the Slack channel's code of conduct from where it started. That's it. They didn't have one. And when you have something like this, maybe this is manageable when you have a community of 17 people. Maybe you can kind of self-moderate, you can work out your disputes, you can still have a decent space. But when you have 1,500, that's not doable. People get harassed, people get hurt, people start to leave. And we heard a bit about, sometimes these can look like just numbers, but to put kind of a person to this, this year for CBPCon, which is the largest C++ conference in the world, I was in charge of running the diversity and inclusion panel. And when I was putting it together, I contacted someone whose work I really, really appreciated. They've been doing great stuff, not only in the community space, but technical work on the standards committee, on library development, really amazing stuff. So I sent her an email and said, would you like to be on our panel? And this is the email I got back. It said, "Dear Sai, thanks for getting in touch. Unfortunately, I no longer work in C++, but I'm really glad you're running this. If more people cared about this, maybe I wouldn't have left." And this email really hit me. This is someone who I really respected, who'd been doing amazing stuff, and there's pain behind this email. These simple words, maybe I wouldn't have left if more people cared about inclusivity, about making good spaces, this hurt. So I don't want this. So a key point is, this is kind of like community building 101, but you've got to be intentional about inclusion right from the start, because this will not happen by accident. To take this a little bit further, here's a quote from Ibram X. Kendi in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, which is fantastic, and you should absolutely go read it. It says, "One either allows racial inequalities to persevere as a racist, or confronts racial inequalities as an anti-racist. There is no in-between safe space of not racist. The claim of not racist neutrality is a mask for racism." So a corollary to this statement is, starting a community without thinking about moderation is a racist action. It perpetuates and upholds white supremacy. Furthermore, you can apply this to, it's not only a racist action, it's a homophobic, it's a transphobic action. Not thinking about moderating your communities actively harms people. Okay? You cannot be neutral about this. So another key point, adopt a COC, again, Community 101, and enforce it. So coming back to C++ a little bit, and hash include itself. For those who aren't aware, hash include is like an import or requires in other languages. So Guy Davidson tweeted this. Why isn't there C++ diversity group called hash include? And if you ever tweeted something as a joke and then suddenly it becomes a thing and you have to actually do some work, well, this is what happened here. Kay Gregory then replied saying, yeah, we should do it. So we did. We got together at CPPCon and we put together some goals. We want to be a support group for people who are underrepresented in the community. We want to try and further inclusivity and diversity in our spaces. And when we were originally starting, we had some pretty small goals, really. We wanted to maybe get some conferences to have COCs, maybe have some more people from underrepresented groups on stage. We were kind of small about it. But, so we started off on Slack. I made a channel in the C++ Slack, and our idea was to have somewhere to organize, somewhere to discuss, somewhere to support. But then this happened. This is one of my favorite comics. You have a majority group, and you say, yeah, you don't fit in here. So we go and we make our own space. And then everyone else comes in and say, hey, I want an invite. And so that's what happened to us. We had this space for organization, discussion, and support. And then people came in and said, hey, this channel is useless to me. Why should I care? No one's oppressed anymore. I'm not racist, but freedom of speech, you're silencing me, and all these things, they come together to stifle the actual reason that we're there. All of these people talking about, freedom of speech are just stopping people from actually discussing things which will make their lives better, will make our spaces better. So that pissed me off. So again, adopt a COC and enforce it, but that's not enough. Because quis custodiet ipsos custodes, or who watches the watchers? How do you pick those people who are coming together to moderate your spaces? How do you make sure that they're actually going to cultivate a community and a culture which you want to see and which will actually uphold people in underrepresented groups? And so, maybe you have a situation like what we found us in, where we came and we said, hey, we want to have the space to discuss inclusivity, and people are just hacking it to pieces. And so some of the moderators were like, yes, you're right. This is a problem. And then some of the other moderators said, well, no, I don't see what the issue is here. And maybe you're more familiar with a picture like this. You have a process which is waiting on some resource and holds some other resource. Then you have another process which is waiting on one and holds the other. This is deadlock. And so when we talk about deadlock in software, we often talk about forward progress guarantees. If you have deadlock, you have no forward progress. And it's the same in communities. If you cannot agree on how to moderate a space and how to make it better for people, then you have deadlock. You have no forward progress. And then people start to leave. And your community ends up looking like this. So curate your moderators. You want to get together a group of people who share a common goal, a group of people who represent the community, who come from a diverse set of backgrounds, identities, people who will actually help create the community which you want to see. As far as how you actually go about getting these people together and making decisions, at Hash Include, we use consensus. Here's a quote by Margaret Thatcher. Consensus is the absence of leadership. I never liked Margaret Thatcher. I kind of prefer this quote by Martin Luther King. A genuine leader is not, that should be searcher, for consensus, but a molder of consensus. Bringing people together, talking through, here are our perspectives, what we can bring to the conversation, what you can learn from our experiences, molding that into a consensus which really helps people. So I'm not going to tell you how to run your communities. We use consensus. Maybe you want to do something else. But I will say, be intentional about your organization structure. Think about how you can structure your communities, your communications, in order to facilitate what you want to see, the change you want to see in your communities. So through consensus, we decided that Slack wasn't working out. We're making no progress. We looked around for, what other things could we use? And we eventually settled on Discord. So again, we made our little space for organization, discussion, and support, and that was like the main point of this. Then we kept talking about C++, because we all like C++. So we made more channels about build systems, about C++, about standardization, and people started to come to talk about C++ and diversity and inclusion, and all together in one space. And when you have more people joining, you get trolls. More than one, because one was not enough. By the way, if you've never seen Troll 2, poetic cinema, so good. So what we came up with was this kind of way of looking at, of structuring our community. We had a bunch of roles. So of course we had the traditional moderators. We also had organizers, who were people who are interested in organizing community activities, in making our spaces better. Maybe had communities of their own, but didn't want to be responsible for moderating the Discord. We then also had this established role, which essentially means that we've seen you interacting with our community enough to know that you're not going to try and actively harm anyone in the community. And this was actually maybe the best decision we ever made, because then this let us have different channels with different amounts of protection. Anyone could come in and discuss C++ or build systems or audio or whatever, but if you wanted to talk about public speaking, talks you're working on, if someone's just getting into public speaking, that can be really, really hard and really vulnerable. And if you're doing that in a space which you don't know if someone's watching to put screenshots somewhere else or to tear your talk to shreds, that's hard. So just having this established role in these protected channels so that you have some feeling that this is a safe space for you to share what you're going through and what you're working on has been really valuable to us. We also have roles for pronouns. This is just one of these things you can do with the tools available for you. So we can have roles we have way, way more than this. This is just a selection which you can actually read on the slide. But they're color-coded, which means that if you know what the color codes look, you can see a message from someone and know how to interact with them at a glance. You can also mouse over their name or whatever. But this is just one of those little kind of quality of life things for if you use your tools effectively. So that's another thing I'd urge you to do. Consider your tools carefully and make the most of them. Think about what tools are available to you can make your spaces better, can make it easier for people to have discussions, include people. Also, the ban hammer. Some tools are there to bring people in. Ban hammer's tool for keeping people away. I am a massive proponent of dropping the ban hammer very early. You see, when we're in the Slack channel, someone would come in and say something which is blatantly terrible, obviously forcing people away from the community. And the moderators would go away and they'd discuss it and they'd say, well, what should we do about this? And should we ban this person? And, oh, well, if they had 2 strikes yet, and no, just ban them. Someone comes into our Discord server with a Pepe avatar, they get banned. No one asks a question, it just happens. Sometimes that does mean we make mistakes. Sometimes, there's a a moderator wasn't aware of some cultural thing which meant the intention behind something was completely different from what they thought it was. So yeah, sometimes we make mistakes, but that's kind of comes with this territory. If you're gonna have trolls, you're gonna have to troll hunt. So you have to empower your moderators to make mistakes. Tell them our job as community organizers is to protect the most harmed people in our communities. If we're building like a community for diversity and inclusion and we're not protecting the most vulnerable people, then like what are we even here for? So you have to empower your moderators to act early and to make mistakes sometimes. But then, also like over-moderation can harm a community. So you have to also empower your community to shape itself. One of my favorite examples of this is our welcome channel. So we had someone join our server who none of us knew, and they started every time someone new came into our server, they would send them a message in that server and say, hey, welcome, tell us a bit about yourself. That started 2 years ago, and he's still doing it today. Like almost every single day, he's on our welcome channel, like individually welcoming people who come into our community. And this is one of those things that like, we didn't know anything about this guy. His name's Richard Chandler, and he's amazing. We didn't know anything about him. He just came in and he made a change. And it's been one of the best things which has happened to us. So, let your community shape itself in positive ways. So again, here were the kind of goals that we had: provide support, improve our spaces. And again, we were kind of had a small view of what we could actually achieve. But this is the kind of thing we've actually done. We now have booths at almost every C++ conference in the world. We've sponsored over a dozen people who otherwise wouldn't be able to make it to these conferences to actually go, to network, to interact, to get jobs, to start a speaking career themselves. We have our t-shirts, nice t-shirts, at committee meetings, on stage, at keynote events, from people who have never interacted with our community. They just say, hey, I want to support this. We have over 2,000 people on our Discord. When we started, we had 8. And in our conferences, we now see things like gender-neutral toilets, live captioning, quiet rooms, code of conduct teams, diversity inclusion panels, and more. This is all stuff that we've achieved just by talking to conference organizers, saying, hey, look, here's a large group of people who care about this stuff, and you will make their lives better. You need to do this. And also, my personal favorite is people who have come into our server and had no experience with public speaking or giving talks or anything. We've helped them to give their first talk. Just this year, we've had a number of people who had never given talks before get out there and make something for themselves because of the support they've had. Someone even left their job to pursue community and public speaking because of all the work we've done. And yeah, that makes me incredibly happy. So kind of a bonus key point is don't be afraid to set ridiculous targets because you might just meet them or exceed them. But as a kind of wrap up, these were the key points which I covered. You want to be intentional about inclusion from day one. Adopt a COC and enforce it. Be very careful about who is moderating your communities. Be intentional about your organization structure, whatever that may look like for your community. Consider your tools carefully and make the most of them. Empower your moderators to make mistakes and also your community to shape itself. So yes, C++ has a diversity and inclusion problem. Yes, tech has a diversity and inclusion problem. But together, we can work to make it better. If you'd like to find us, we are at includecpp.org or at includecpp on Twitter, or you can find me at Tartan Llama. We also have a Discord server, or you can just come talk to me afterwards. I'll be around. Thank you.